Another thing that I decided early on that I thought would be very important would be to indicate to students at the University of Tennessee that they could go anywhere, they could work anywhere. My name is Sam Swan, and I'm a professor in the School of Journalism and Electronic Media, and I'm the Director of Global Programs for the College of Communication and Information. I have, over the years, taught a variety of classes. I coordinate all of the study abroad programs, and I've been doing that for 15 years. I am retiring at the end of December. I will have been at the University of Tennessee for 37 years. I came here in January of 1985, and so I thought it makes sense to conclude my time here in December to make it an even 37 years. I didn't really have any idea that I would be here 37 years. I thought I might stay for 3 to 5 years and then go somewhere else. But University of Tennessee in Knoxville became a part of my life. I was a television news reporter and anchor. I worked in radio. Finished my doctoral degree at the University of Missouri, which is a very hands-on program. They have their own television station, KOMU-TV, and an NBC affiliate, and so I knew that model very, very well. Later, I was head of the department at Southern Illinois University, which is also a very professionally oriented program. So when I came here, my goal was to create opportunities for our students in radio and television, even though we did not have, at that point, a television station. The university did have a student radio station, but it had not been fully integrated into the Department of Broadcasting. So that's one of the first things that I did. I was able to change the curriculum to ensure that every student who majored in broadcasting worked at least one semester at WUTK-FM. And so hundreds of students have on their resume that they worked at WUTK-FM. I created a television program a little more than 25 years ago called UT Today, and it's broadcast every weekend on WBIR TV here in Knoxville in the spring. So I created a class that was designed to function like a newsroom so that students could also have on their resume that they were producing packages and anchoring for a program that was broadcast on the #1 station in Knoxville. I figured out early on here that this was a place where a lot of students came because of sports. I created a sports broadcasting class. Now, there are many, many of the graduates working in sports broadcasting roles, including ESPN and as sports anchors for radio and television stations around the country. Another thing that I decided early on that I thought would be very important would be to indicate to students at the University of Tennessee that they could go anywhere, they could work anywhere. And so I began taking students to New York City or to Los Angeles or to other locations, especially Atlanta to CNN, and to New York to tour the networks, so that they would see that the people working there are not really that much different. And so I wanted them to have the confidence that they could one day work at the network level if they chose. We've literally sent, again, hundreds of students on those kinds of trips. I led the first study abroad program for this college in 2000. Again, I wanted students here to see the world, to experience the world, to have an opportunity to travel and understand more about other people and languages and cultures, because I had had similar experience when I was 22 and knew the impact that would have on students here. That has been a very gratifying part of my career. I can usually tell when I see students in classes that they have the drive, the ambition, and the talent. So the difference usually among students and separating them maybe from people who work at the network level in New York is a combination of talent and ambition and experience. One has to sort of pay his dues, work his way up to that level. You don't typically jump from a university straight to New York. You typically start in a smaller market. Well, I'll tell you a story about a student here. Her name is Shari Williams, a great student. She came here from Atlanta, wound up getting a job in Jackson, Tennessee, a very small television market. But she was good, and she kept getting better and better as a reporter and an anchor. And when that happens, people start to notice. And so then she was hired away by a TV station in Birmingham, Alabama, a larger market, more money. She was able to land a job in Miami, and she got to cover both sports and news. It was an ideal job. Then she got a job in the top 5 station in Dallas. Now she's at the network-owned and operated station in Philadelphia, ABC. She's one step away from the network. We have had students who did not desire to do that specifically, but wanted to work behind the scenes. In those cases, we've been able to send students directly to New York to become pages at NBC, and then later that student rose to a position on the Today Show, and now she's a producer for the NBC Nightly News. Well, if people are interested in storytelling, journalism is a good fit. It's about telling various kinds of stories. Without journalism, democracies cannot exist, because one of the important roles of journalism is to serve as a watchdog of government, to serve as a sounding board for people, to reflect the values of society. And so who else is going to do that except journalists, print journalists, broadcast journalists? I like to say that going into journalism is a calling to serve people. We work for the audience. We don't work for the people who necessarily own the station or the network or the newspaper. And our primary purpose is to find the truth and share that truth with our readers and our listeners and our viewers. For about 25 years, I worked with broadcast journalists in other countries. I did workshops, a lot of them, in about 50 countries. Instead of talking about covering news, I would start in the morning with a reporter, and we would plan a story that was assigned to that journalist. I would go with them to do the story the way that we would do the stories in America. In one case, there are many cases, I could tell you many stories, but one was in Bulgaria, and I worked in Bulgaria a lot. A student was assigned to do a journalist was assigned to do a story about how the government was no longer going to be able to provide funding for people who had had life-altering strokes. So the station wanted to do a story about that. So I asked the reporter, well, what would you think you would do with this story? And she said, well, there's a press conference this afternoon. I'm going to go to a press conference and then maybe interview the minister of the health department after that. And I said, that's it? Yeah, that's all she could think of to do. I said, no, you have to put a face on a story. You have to put a human element in a story. So for the next couple of hours, we searched online and through phone calls to find somebody who had had a stroke and now would be affected. I always emphasize who is affected by the story and tell the story in the words of those people. So finally we found this man, 60-year-old former boxer, famous boxer in Bulgaria. He had fought fighters in the United States. He was well known there, but he had a stroke. May have been caused by his boxing. And yet he was still trying to teach boxing to others. And he agreed to be interviewed. And so we went to this gym where he was training young boys to become boxers and interviewed him. And so that became a very, very effective interview. And then later we did the press conference and we did that, then went back and edited the story. And so in that kind of story, you begin with the boxer, the small story, and expand to the larger issue, and then come back to the small story. That story became the most memorable one that TV station did that night. The rest of the stories were official government type stories, like the way she would have done it. But I wanted to make the point that when you put a human face on a story, people will remember it. And even after I went back 2 or 3 years later, they still had that story that they could show. Well, we've seen a shift in recent years. A lot of students seem to be interested in entertainment journalism. I understand that. And we live in the music capital of America, Music City, so a lot of students want to work in the music field and the show business. We've sent a lot of graduates to Los Angeles, including one who went on to win an Academy Award. Another area, documentary video production. We've had a growth in that area. Science journalism, because we happen to be located here next to Oak Ridge, and we have placed a number of our graduates working as science writers or video producers at ORNL and Y12 and other places like that. We also place a lot of students in media management roles, sales, programming, promotion, and ultimately management. There are a number of graduates who are working as general managers of radio and television stations now around the country. Well, I think we do a good job in CCI and in all of the schools in providing opportunities for our students. Students have the opportunity to work at the Daily Beacon. They always have had that opportunity, and that's a great opportunity for students to do that. Also, we have our online news site, TNJN, Tennessee Journalist, because that's a growth area as well. Many of our graduates now are working in digital content creation, digital content producers. And I believe we'll see more of that. We have the Volunteer Channel, a television on-campus channel, mostly producing now online, content online, but it's video content. So they're getting experience in a state-of-art television studio, producing video content, and that's a great opportunity. And then WUTK FM continues to be a viable option, often voted the best radio station in Knoxville. Next year will be its 40th year on the air. And the TV program I mentioned, UT Today, will continue after I'm no longer here, and I'm very happy and proud of that. We have a magazine emphasis in our school, so students every spring produce a magazine called Scoop. I sincerely hope that the international programs that we have begun here will continue, and that more and more students in the future will have opportunities to travel and study in other countries, so that they will experience what so many others have, which is a life-changing, eye-opening experience about how the world is small and that people are not so different, and that by communicating with each other, we can make a difference.